Do you have the record sign?
Got it.
Uh, you consent to the recording of this podcast
I consent.
and the distribution of this podcast?
Also that.
All right, James. Hey, thank you so much, man. You're the first comedian I got to come on my podcast. I know a few guys, and I've been kind of reaching out, but the schedules and everything just never worked. And I love comedy. That's one of my first loves. I even tried it a few times when I was younger. So I'm glad to have you here and talk about comedy. So for people listening who don't know you, would just tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started into comedy.
All right. My name is James. I've been doing stand-up comedy here in LA for over 6.5 years, and that's one of like the main questions you'll get like when you're a comic is like you'll meet another comic and they'll ask you, oh, how long you been doing it, right? And I'll tell them 6 years, but really when it's on and off, I tell them if you put all the days back to back, it's only really been 1 year, because
Okay.
that's how I really gauge myself, But yeah, so it's been on and off 6 years. In that time, I've produced my own shows out here in LA. And right now, currently, I'm running a little kind of faux comedy club in my backyard called Raven Comedy House.
Okay, tell us about that. How'd you get that started? And how's it
So
doing?
it's going. It's a lot. Location is everything. And I'm out here in like San Fernando Valley, like deep Silmar. And so like between here and LA, it's just like what do you call it? I just got to get the word out for people out here, It's been going all right. I started during the pandemic. There was this long stretch of time like where nobody was doing really any comedy.
Right.
If there was comedy going on, it was like during Zoom shows, and really, if you talk to anybody about those Zoom shows, they're not a fan. It had its benefits, and were in terms of like writing, like set up, print, punchline, the
Right.
writing aspect of it. But when it came to like feel of like what's a real reaction, there's always like a lag time between punchline and like, oh, people laughed, okay, should I keep going, so the timing was always the thing with that. So because I'm a rebel and we weren't supposed to be meeting up, I was like, okay, let's do something outside. I had the room in the backyard. I got this, what do you call it, this stage made out of like metal that was welded by somebody who I ended up buying it from, and I put it in my backyard. I put some what do you call it, some curtains on there, a spotlight, and set out some chairs, and then set the word out. That was like the first time I did it. I think it happened in October of 2019.
2019.
2019. Wait, let's see. We're
So that's before COVID, right? I think.
Yeah. So no, that's 2020. So it was it was October of 2020, and then I didn't open up back again until July of 2021. So from October to December, I was hosting an open mic at least once a week called the Silmar Open Mic, and people would show up and tell me how great the location was. Then the second wave of the pandemic happened, and nobody was doing anything. No, everything shut down again. And so during that time, I ended up using my stimulus check money to invest in like wood and materials and lighting, and I just made up a little stage in the backyard, and I've been hosting some shows from there too.
There you go, man. That's what the stimulus was supposed to be for. It seems like you're using
the
it.
Hustle.
It's not like you were doing a guerrilla comedy too.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah. So you're posting a lot of stuff. You have a presence, is I guess the business word, online. Where can people find some of your stuff out there?
So for my Raven Comedy House, it would be at Instagram, Raven Comedy House. And for my personal Instagram page, it's James _Rios _ there's a lot of underscores, but it's James Rios, James _ Rios.
They'll find it. They'll probably find your picture there or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that you say that I have such a media presence, because I don't feel like I post enough, like
there was a time when I first reached out to you, I noticed like, wow, this guy is putting out like a lot. But I guess like me, you get caught up in life and it's like waves,
Yeah, I wish I was one of those people who was just like every day, engaging with your audience or whatever.
I can't do it, man. I think I know I'm supposed to. I think I'm just too old school, man. I just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, same. Too shy.
Too shy, but you're on stage, man.
There, you know, I've heard from many different performers that like there's like a difference between like interacting with somebody one on one and then
Yeah.
going up on stage. Like for me, it's hard to understand when people tell me that like, oh, I could never do what you do, like stand up or do tell some jokes in front of people. And I'm like, I don't. To me, that doesn't make sense. I'm just like, it's just like the next more normal thing. You just get up there and make a fool of yourself a little bit.
Yeah, the fear of talking in public, I guess, is the biggest fear. It's bigger than death. But I kind of relate to what you're understanding, because in a way, the intimacy is almost different, where talking to a lot of people could almost be the same as talking to nobody, because you're not, so direct, where you're just talking to, like, say, a therapist in a quiet room, like
Right,
that can
right.
get like really, really into the emotions or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's what Raven House has been like during the pandemic. Nowadays, I've been so with all of the things that I've been doing with Raven House, trying to make that a thing, was just to get more stage time myself. Sorry about that. There's some laundry going on.
I was wondering, it sounds like somebody was buzzing somebody's hair. It's like, you're in a barber shop?
Yeah, I should have turned it off. Is it all right if I go do that right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt the thing. We'll edit it in post.
Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Yeah, good Bluetooth.
Okay. If you want to
All right.
multitask, we could talk while you do your laundry.
Start folding and shit.
It's a new concept for a new show, man. You know what I mean?
It's very integrated.
Yeah, my wife. It's funny because, hold on, so I just want to, you can go back to that, but my wife watches. She put me onto, so I guess it's kind of a thing where people are doing sort of multitask. There's one where a woman is doing her makeup, and the whole time she's telling you like a murder story.
Oh,
like a real life, like, like whatever, one of these famous murders, like Jeffrey Dahmer or something like that. And like she'll tell you the whole story, like how he got caught and blah, blah, blah. But the whole time it's like a makeup tutorial at the same time. It's like, what the?
Very niche. I mean, there's this whole thing right now, like everybody's realizing that women listen to so many of those murder mystery podcasts or those unsolved mystery murder podcasts. Anyway.
Yeah. It's a big thing. And I'm trying to get into it, but my thing is just really just talking. I really like picking people's brains and advancing ideas. That's kind of like my thing, A lot of people think of me as sort of an extrovert, but I'm really not. Like, I'm a guy who spends a lot of time in my head, really thinking about things. And then I like to talk to people to sort of test that, to bounce it off the wall. Kind of like what comedians do, right? You get an idea for a joke, like you were saying, the premise, the punchline, how do I set it up? Well, you test it, right? You go up on stage, and that's the proving grounds right there. That's kind of like what this podcast is all about.
Okay, nice. We were talking about how, I guess the pandemic just like, slowed down comedy, right? Anyway, so I was doing the Raven House and taking pictures because I wanted to provide value to the comics that were driving so far from LA to Sylmar.
Right.
And then slowly that just became one of my new things now. I started taking pictures at different shows. And recently one show that was here at Raven House was called Comic Wars, which is like a roast battle between two comics, right? I don't know if you've ever watched Roast Battle on Comedy Central.
No, but I've heard about it.
Yeah, so that was like that's a particular format, but this was like a different format, and we recently went to the Improv, so the Hollywood Improv, which is another big comedy club out here.
Yeah, awesome. So it seems to me, by listening to different podcasts from comedians, that what happened in the pandemic is that comedy sort of, people always wondering like what's the next thing in entertainment, but I think like a lot of comedians sort of, they say necessity is the mother of all invention. Like a lot of people started doing new things, started making like little videos, started performing in different ways, whether it's through a Zoom or, like you said, in your backyard. I heard there was like drive-in movie theaters were converted into sort of like, there's all sort of like new things that came from this. So I think like comedy sort of expanded in a way. People are trying different types of things to see if they can make this work.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not the only one that started like a little place in my backyard. There's like a couple other shows that are really successful nowadays. They get like headliners coming into this person's backyard because of just like that necessity. People needed entertainment, and outdoors seem to be like the safest thing. And, people mask up or whatever, and they show up, pay their tickets, and have a good time. It's great. That's at least how I've seen it.
Yeah, man. But for me, can you
Mhm.
tell me like how did it start? Like I remember watching, I think Raw, Eddie Murphy Raw, when I was a
Okay.
young man and being like my mind blown. Like what? You could just be up there talking and
Uh-huh.
having people laughing like that. Like how did it start for you? Where did that love for comedy come from?
You know what? So one of the things that led me to believe that like stand-up comedy was the thing that I really want to do is that the first time I ever got up on and performed a stand-up comedy set that I wrote, um, was the first thought that came to my head was that like I wish I would have been doing this sooner.
Mm.
And that was like the first time I've ever felt that way for anything. Like I've gone to college, I've done salsa dancing, I've done different things, right? And none of them like resonated with me as much as doing a performance in front of people and making them laugh. My first set was at a what do you call it, a talent show at my old job, and it was like, oh yeah, if you have a talent, you can do it. And I was like, I can do some stand up. Um, and
But wait,
they
you
said
never
okay.
done stand-up before.
I had never done stand up before, no,
Okay.
but I just said like I wanted to do it, and I
Okay,
felt
okay.
it'd be a very safe environment to do it. And from that first set, that's when I was like, okay, I had a good enough reaction that made me want to come back. The second set wasn't as good, but then you just keep doing it. It's like a learning process.
Yeah.
And that's how I started.
Where would you say you are in that process? Because I heard
Mm,
comedians talk about like
the
uh
road, right?
yeah, well, just like not just the road, like when they're first starting off, that sometimes they're talk about baseball, like batting average. Sometimes they're like 50%. One day they're good, the next day they're bombing, one day they're good, the next day they're bombing. Like,
Right.
where do you think you are? Like, what percentage of the time are you good compared to like you're not doing so well?
Mm, there's a level right now where I feel comfortable in the amount of jokes that I have for my set, right? So we all think about our sets in terms of minutes, right? How many minutes do you have? And I would say I've got a solid 7 minutes now, as opposed to somebody else who's been doing it longer. They might have 45 or they have an hour and then they record it, right? So that's what level I'm at in so far. So like a minute per year is what I've developed. And then and now these are like tried and true, like these are jokes that have like gone away, come back, rewritten, and then it's like, okay, now it sounds better than it did, or it's the same joke that I started off with 6 years ago, but through its transcourse of time, it's matured, and now it's something that I'm comfortable being. Oh, this is part of my set, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm always trying out a new joke or a different format.
Mhm.
Um, and that's always a learning process. It's always that trial and error. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. 7 minutes.
Hey, that's better than nothing, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Back in the
So
day, like years ago, I've heard that headlining comics used to have like an hour that they would just recycle years on and years on and years on. So the fact that I've got a rotating 6 minutes is it's all right. It's evolving.
that's enough to get you on a show, on a night show. You know what I mean? They usually give you
Hmm.
about like 5, 6, 7 minutes.
Hmm. Hmm. That's
Yeah.
what you need.
So you mentioned writing. I'm
Hmm.
a writer now myself, well, an aspiring writer. How much time do you focus towards writing?
Well, it's hard. Like the ideal, if let's say I was on top of it, like what I idealize is like I am now an official writer, is that like if I woke up every morning and I wrote for an hour,
Mhm.
right? My writing has happened more like while I'm doing the dishes now. I'm washing some mundane thing and like an idea will come up, and then as I'm washing, I try to develop it. So it's more cerebral than it is physical. When it comes to the physical time, I go, there's waves. There'll be maybe I'll write for a week and a half where I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get this discipline down to write every day on my laptop, whether it's journaling or whether it's trying to flesh out an idea. But it's happening less and less, and then it's always that's the game, trying to get back to doing that, so that when you go up on stage, somebody, sometimes there are shows out here that are like improv stand-up,
Mhm.
where somebody will throw out a suggestion like Coca-Cola cans, right? And if you've written or journaled about Coca-Cola cans in your past, you'll have some story attached to it, then you can flesh out a bit from there. So
Mm.
that's what writing is, it's all of it.
Yeah, it seems
So
that everyone has a different process, and there seems to be two
mhm.
different camps, which is the guys who, when they come up on stage, they know precisely what they're going to do, each word. And there's other people that sort of kind of winging it, but they have like ideas, like you said, sort of concepts, like, well, I'm going to talk about this. And during the process of live talking to the crowd, the joke sort of comes to them.
Yeah.
Where do you think you fall on that spectrum?
I think I'm still trying to discover that. That's also part of what you would consider style, right?
Yeah.
So a comic that started, I don't know, if like I wish I could give you an example of like a famous comic who, like, for example, Dave Chappelle, right? Dave Chappelle is a very cerebral comic. I don't know, I've never heard of him like actually having to write anything down. What I've heard what he does is like, you'll have like a fishbowl of different words or premises or whatever. He'll pull something out and then he'll use his brain to tell the story to come to that punchline. But Bill Burr is also another comic that's very, it's just like he's found a way to like take off that like filter that stops your thoughts from like, coming out of your mouth, and he knows how to like, it's so honed in that he knows exactly how to set up the punchline as he's talking to you.
Right.
So
it's kind of like they program their brain for comedy.
Yeah.
So whatever you put in is coming out funny.
Yes. And that's like, that's like it's like a muscle you have to practice. But then there's also the writing aspect of it, where like it has to make, the words have to like connect and make sense in a way, you know what I mean? Like when it comes down to the nitty gritty, you have to make sure you're not repeating certain words, right? Like you can't say like, oh, it was literally like this, and then it was literally that, or something like that. You have to take out all that fat where it'll still make sense. What's the best way to say something with the least amount of words? That's the game.
Yeah. Same thing for me. Same thing for writing a novel. Like you don't want to blab on about something. It's cut the fat, get to the point.
Yeah.
As best as you can. In comedy, I think there's no other art almost that matters more to. Like, yes, writing a novel, or maybe performing if you're like an actor on stage or whatever. Of course, this all is relevant to. But in comedy, it's because in comedy, you have to get a reaction. I heard this like every 30 seconds or something like that.
Right. There's a metric. Yeah. Like if you're, for example, if you're auditioning for a comedy club and they give you 2 minutes, you want to have a what they would say joke per minute ratio, where it's like, oh, every 10 seconds you gotta have like at least a laugh, or it has to be like boom, 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 boom. And if you take longer, it better be a funnier joke, because the whole thing with comedy is timing, right? And within the amount of time, you gotta sort of like build the pressure before you can break the expectation. And that's another part of the game.
Yeah, and the point that I was trying to make with that is that in comedy you sort of have a clock, like in basketball, right? You got that shot clock. Where in other arenas of art, where you write and you talk to someone, that shot clock is a lot longer.
Yeah,
you still have to give a payoff, but you can go read in like a book. Let's say you could read 10, 12, 20 pages of sort of build up, and then boom, the action comes, and people are okay. They'll read 10, 12 pages. Where in comedy, like I've been sitting here for like 2-3 minutes and I haven't laughed. There's a problem.
Then yes, there is. Yeah. It's a whole, it's a whole thing of like attention spans, and it coming like a wave of the ocean. You got to ride that wave when it's there, and then manipulate it to yourself.
But some really great comedies, I'm thinking of. Well, I know you're not allowed to say Bill Cosby no more, but I remember, I'm old enough to remember him when he did stand up. I remember there were times where he would have 5, 6, 7 minutes of just build up, and then the laugh would come, and it would be hysterical.
George Carlin was a word from paper to mouth kind of things. Like I've heard him.
He wrote a lot.
Yes, he wrote, but everything that he wrote was already done before he performed it. I don't know if that makes sense. Like he would type it all out and then read it word for word as he's on stage when he was practicing. And like I don't know if you've on Spotify, if you were to look up George Carlin's like albums, there are some albums that are not in front of a live audience, but it's the set that he uses, and it's just like him reading what his joke was. It's still like a masterful piece of work though.
Yeah. What's the guy from Jay and Silent Bob? Is it Kevin James? The chubbier guy?
Kevin James, or is it Kevin Smith?
Kevin Smith. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe I'm confused with you because I'm talking to you. But
Kevin James is the Paul Blart, I think.
Oh yeah, the mall cop guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I was listening to him on a podcast, and he was talking about, because remember he had George Carlin late in his life. He had him in one of his movies, and while he was performing in the movie, he was writing the next hour that he was going to do on HBO, and he asked him to come inside the trailer, and they were talking, and he did the whole hour in front of him.
Wow.
George Carlin just like you're saying, like he had it all worked out word for word, and he performed it just, I think maybe in front of him and maybe like one other person. He did his whole hour in front of them just to get like the feedback and see what people think.
It's amazing. I wish I would have been alive to see George Carlin live.
Know.
I mean, I was alive when he was performing, but I wasn't old enough to go to a show.
Yeah. I feel that way about a lot of people, man. I didn't see Michael Jordan play. Or Kobe for that matter, or Shaq. I didn't see Michael Jackson or Prince. So many people, man.
Legends gone.
Yeah. All right, man. We're gonna get a little bit more serious, man.
Okay.
The First Amendment, cancel culture, man. Where do you stand on that?
It's interesting because it's a very prevalent thing that exists within the comedy community nowadays. Like everybody's aware of it, but it's also like non-existent almost, if you were to say that. Like I haven't run into anybody, and it's probably just because I haven't been exposed to them yet, that is like super pro canceling somebody. And I'm trying to think of like some comics who they're activists online, but I mean they'll cancel other people, but I don't know if they haven't thought it through. Well, it seems like what's up?
Okay, so I just wanted to help you out with that a little bit. I think you're right. Now that I think about it, you actually, like a light bulb went off when you said that. So no comedian is necessarily saying, when these things come up, right, and then it's like a media storm and it's hot for this minute. No comedian is like, hey, cancel this dude. But yet I don't see a lot of them coming to someone's rescue either, to their defense.
Right.
And in a way that, to me, that's sort of an indictment by you not putting your neck on the line. You know what I mean? That make any sense?
Right. It does. What I was more getting towards that is that, like, I'm also not, like, I don't know any famous, I mean, like, I know some famous people, but I don't know, like I'm not connected to like a Kevin Hart where I'm like to get his feedback on what they're afraid of or not afraid of.
Right.
Within my own belief of like, the freedom of speech and you're being a comic is that you are, as a comic, you're the one that's basically twiddles the edge of like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and society is the one that determines that where that edge is. There are some things that there are some tricks that you do, like people will play it safe by making jokes or creating a set based on things, making fun of themselves, right? So that way it's you can't criticize somebody for making fun of themselves, like, oh,
right,
you can't make jokes, you can't make fun of yourself or your family, it's but it's safe because it's my family, it's my life. But also like the really, really funny stuff would be like Andrew Schultz. I don't know if you've heard of that comic.
Yeah, I know Andrew.
Yeah, so Andrew Schultz definitely is like on that edge, where you'll talk about something controversial, but end up making it funny, right? Which is usually the argument that like if people are laughing and it's meant for comedy's sake, then anything should be allowed. But I don't know. It's I guess it's still to be determined.
Yeah, when we talk First Amendment, I bring this up. It's kind of a dick move because there's really no good answer for this. But like I said before, I mean, I'm all about the discussion of something, and so with that is where I have the problem, right? Therein lies the issue. Are we allowed to discuss anything? And it seems like certain people with this wokeness, yes, something is bad, right? Me and you can agree on something is a bad thing to do. We shouldn't do this or whatever. But I'm saying, shouldn't we have the right to discuss this? Now, people might say that how me and you are talking, if the recording was off and I don't post this, I don't think many people have an issue with me and you just talking about, let's just say, because we're both Latino, things that have to do with Latino politics, right? People, when I was growing up would say spick. I was a spick. You're on the West Coast, they called you a spick. You probably didn't know what that was. They probably say a beaner or something like that. So people will say there's certain words you can't use, and people will say there's certain topics you can't. And that's where I have the problem. I think the discussion of something is not the same as saying I approve this message or whatever.
Of course.
You see what I'm saying with that? And I think that's what's going on in the media, and it's bleeding into comedy. If we lose comedy, I think everything is done and we're completely into fascism. There has to be places where people could say things and talk. Ideas need to be pondered upon and discussed.
Right.
No, would you agree with
agree.
that? Yeah.
I agree. I always said that like ideas are like Pokemon, you got to battle them. It's like, that's how your opinion gets stronger, if you can win against other opinions. And, sometimes you're going to take some L's, and that hopefully helps you grow. You always gain experience. I agree that you cannot cancel comedy, because I've thought, as a thought experiment, I wondered what would a country where nothing is offensive even look like? Would
that's
anything
true.
ever be funny? Like, what is funny in that instance? Because somebody's going to take offense to something at one point or another. So it's like you're fighting against the dark.
Dude, that's awesome. I never thought about that. Why would a country or just whatever be a place where no one was offended? You're right. It wouldn't be funny. Nothing would be fun. You sort of need that edge, that tension. Like you're talking about, a good joke builds up tension. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and it always like there's like talks about like punching up and punching down, right? But at the same time, like if a country where everything's equal and no one's like better than anyone because you can't make fun of anybody, then like there is no punching up or down. I don't know, it would be crazy. Yeah, man, I think comedy is just making fun of like that which you're not allowed to make fun of sometimes. I think about like back in the days, like the royal jester, right? He was the only one who could make fun of the king,
the only one allowed to, right?
Yeah, the only one allowed to, but he existed. And I think that what stand-up comics are, we're the jesters of the world. We're here to make fun of that which people want to laugh at but don't know how to or can't.
Yeah, to go back to recent past, bringing up that gesture thing, it made me think of Donald Trump, where every president, I want to say for like the last 60 or 7 years, would show up to the correspondence dinner where a professional comedian would just roast the hell out of them. But he didn't do it. And if you think about a society, we're talking about like societies where everyone's equal or whatever, like there's tyranny, there's democracy, there's fascism. If that's what I mean about like, if we cancel comedians, if we lose that aspect of our society, we're in a lot of trouble, because there has to be a way to say the king is wearing no pants. If you remember that story, if we don't have, even if it's just that one guy, okay, this is the one guy that can make fun of our leadership or whatever, it needs to exist. And because without it, we're living in tyranny. We can't criticize. Like that doesn't even make any sense.
Now, here's my question to you. Do you think that it's possible for any entity, world, government, or anything to actually stop let's say, is anything strong enough to actually stop comedy from existing or the not being able to make fun of? There will always be some sort of rebels. There will always be some sort of like, the outcasts of society. Even if like there was a one world order, right? There'd be dark societies where, underground comedy clubs, comedy was born from the darkness, most of the comedy clubs that started comedy clubs were run by the mob, it's like from that evil. So, it's like that darkness
is
like,
evil though.
Yeah, if you had to talk about energies, it's just like, there's all this good energy, then there's that energy right in the middle that is just a melding of both of it. That's why
pack that in for me. What was the question again?
We're talking about the First Amendment and canceling culture and whether
no, but you asked me what would comedy look like?
No, what I asked was like, do you think that could ever happen where we're afraid of what you can't say? Do you think that those who are pro, you can't say this, will they ever take over completely where people are afraid to talk?
I think they have in pockets of society. Yeah. I think a really strict religious type organizations or communities. I think that has exist. But you kind of answered the question yourself, which is humor is natural.
Mhm.
How many times I love accidental humor where no one's trying to be funny and someone
Mhm.
just says something or does something and people just crack up. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like something just happens,
Spontaneous.
spontaneous, unexpected. It's natural. It's inherent in every human being. Like they say,
Mhm.
it's one of the best medicines, right? It's a built-in thing in us. That's like our hunger, desire to have companionship, to have sex, to laugh. I think is
So
part of
yes.
that. So I would answer the question by saying that the way we see humor now, how it exists in our country, present time,
Mhm.
it wouldn't exist that way, but it will still be around in somehow, some way. Maybe kind of like what you're saying. People will be hiding in the dark somewhere.
Mhm.
Like okay, but so back in the days, if you watch old comedy, I remember my father talking about old time comedy, saying, when people couldn't use certain language or talk about sex, that they would still do it just through innuendo.
Mhm.
Like what's that famous joke
Innuendos.
from an old female comedian? She would say like, is that a gun in your pocket or are you happy to see me?
Right.
Everyone knows what she was saying, but she
Mhm.
wasn't saying it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm. Wordplay for
Yeah.
sure. Um, yeah, I don't know. What worries me is that like I think that the comedy with new generations coming up, if they are very hardcore in belief of like, oh, the things that you're not allowed to say, that it'll just get watered down. At least that's what I worry about, that people won't are too afraid to say the inappropriate thing because even though it might make it funnier, it's just like it's off-putting. So they play it safe.
Well, there's a
For
business
example,
aspect to that too, isn't there? You might be
yes,
hurting
that's
your money by saying it.
yeah, and that's a big thing. Luckily I'm not in that. I'm not making enough money
Yeah.
enough to be like, oh, but yeah, I would definitely get bought off. Right now I need the money.
So are you a
uh
clean comic or are you a dirty comic? Which I don't
I
think
think
I
I'm
don't like
a
that term, but yeah.
no, like I think if the word is blue collared, right? Blue collared
Oh,
comedy.
is that what they're saying now? Okay.
Yeah, or at least that's what they used to say, but yeah. I don't know, trying to find there are some clean jokes that I have. There are some other, off-putting jokes, but that's just because of that's what I find funny. I don't make inappropriate jokes. Like, for example, there's like a all-knowing rule with like, you can't make fun of like abortion. There's never, or rape is never
Right.
really funny.
Unless you're
There's
Louis
that
C.K. or somebody.
unless you've reached the level that you can manipulate words and influence into a point where you make it funny, and that's, that you can't get there just like that. There are people who try, and it's a good attempt, but sometimes it just doesn't work out, and more or less it's like you find out that it doesn't work.
Mm,
Everybody's gonna try it at
yeah.
one point or another, and they're gonna suck at it, and that's what you got to learn. It's a
Yeah.
hard.
And you should. I think that you should be able to have that freedom. It's kind of like my argument
The
about the
freedom to
whole thing.
fail.
Yeah. And you grow from that. People are sometimes
Mhm.
afraid to fail, but that's where all the good learning, that's where all the lessons in life are, is right there, failing.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, what was the question before that?
I don't know. You expect me to be professional here, man? I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy in my attic,
I,
man.
f- I feel like I brought it up for a reason. Why did I bring it up?
I don't know. But I got some other stuff, man.
Yeah, what's up?
The word comedy, I think, is it's not a hot topic, but I think it's one of those things where it's a little bit abstract. So when I say comedy, you know, different people think different things. But I would say that under comedy falls writers, guys who do
Mhm.
improv, actors, stand up, and then just
Mhm.
funny people that you meet. Like, you ever meet a guy? He's not a writer, he's not an actor, he's just a fucking funny dude. You know what I mean?
Mhm. I would label all of them artists.
Okay.
I think artistry is a mindset or a type of person that you are. You're an artist because of the way you perceive the world in a certain way, whether it be through words or music or something. That's how they express. Even like just regular people that you meet that are funny in some way or another, they're just artistic in how they express themselves. right? So yeah, so yeah, blanketed them all.
Yeah. Do you
Artistry.
see yourself in just one of those categories though? Like you just see yourself as a stand-up, or are you an actor? Are you an improv guy? Are you an all-around funny guy, writer?
I try to make it easy on myself by just saying performer, and I think that a
Okay.
performer will just fall under all of that. I don't like if I were to label myself a stand-up comic, yes, that's what I am because of what I do. But I'm also a producer because I produce shows.
Right.
I'm also a booker. I'm a photographer. I'm a father. All these labels, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
at the end of the day, I think it all blankets with the word performer. That like you're doing everything that you're doing to get on a stage to express yourself.
Okay, so you've been doing this for 6.5 years, going on 7.
Hmm.
What does success for you look like?
Well, I think everybody thinks that success is getting paid to do the thing that you enjoy doing. Um, for me right now, I think success would be like I just get to pay my my bills every month. Like I don't have to worry about bills, and I have a little bit of money to kill my debt. When I'm zero, when I'm debt free and making a surplus, then I've found a little bit of success. Yeah,
What's your
that's what's
ultimate goal? What would you say that is in this business?
if I would just say what the route that I'm taking, what I'd like to do is own a comedy club somewhere near the ocean,
Oh, wow.
San Luis Obispo maybe, where I get to go out and do stand-up comedy every night and nobody can pull me off because it's my club. It's the ultimate goal is to do stand-up comedy for as long as I want to. And my route, instead of doing the Hollywood thing where I'm making connections with all the bookers going out there, it's a different type of energy that you have to put out to being that person.
Yeah.
And for me, because I'm a dad, and because I need to find a way to make money, I'm taking more of a like a back end route. It's like the
Right.
goal is to be funny someday in front of people. How I get there, it could be as easy as opening up my own club and my own space.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying you're not really focused on a national level. Like I've heard comedians always talk about there's guys who are killers, they're
Hmm.
monsters on stage, but in their local hub where
Place.
they're from. You know what I
Right.
mean? They really don't, when they go other places, if they even do, they don't do as well, but they're kind of just focused on where they are. Is that what you're trying to
Hmm.
say? Like you would love to just have something there in Cali, by the beach, by the water, and it's your thing. I try to tell this to a lot of young guys nowadays because I'm older. I just turned 45. That there's
Hmm.
different monikers of success and how you view it,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Where yes, you could be Kevin Hartwood. Fuck, that guy is like TV shows, movies, stand up. I think he has like clothes,
Yeah.
supplements. I think he has like everything, right? But that guy also probably doesn't sleep. How much does he
Hmm.
see his family, right? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And there's a guy like, I love doing stand up, and I can
Hmm.
do stand up right here at home, and I can get that buzz, right? Because I wanted to get into that next. Like, what is that you get from doing stand up? But also,
Hmm.
you make a good living, but you're just, people really don't know James, but James in California within this 50-mile radius is a fucking man. And he's
Right.
happy with that. And I understand that, man. I think that's uh it's a new way of thinking of success. I think it's not very American, but I see a lot of people starting
I
starting
think
to
it's
see
the
that
most
because
American thing. It's my own picket fight fence, man. It's my own little plot of
your
land.
slice of the pie of
Very
America.
American.
There you go.
Yeah, it's corporate, I'm building jobs. No, yeah, man. And I'm not opposed to like going national, like part of the journey to stand up and being better is to go out of town and to like try to build an audience, right?
Yeah. Or to
Um,
test your material.
exactly. And I think that what stand-up comedy has been called is like a true matriarch or oligarchy, or where it's like it doesn't care about sex, right? It's like the
Right.
only rule is like, are you funny or are you not funny? And I think that if you reach that level of funny where you're like funny to everybody because of your writing's on point, because your performance on stage is on point, because you're getting people are asking you to be on their show, then I think in my mind that like success just follows with that. um I think that the pursuit of stand-up comedy for me is not necessarily to like reach a national, like, oh, I am the next Kevin Hart. Rather, it's the pursuit itself of like, like, can I wake up today in the morning to write a new set before the show tonight? Can I do that? Can I put myself through that situation? Can I test my material? How prepared am I? And the stretches of, the challenges you give yourself throughout the time. So it's overcoming those little things that it's just the pursuit of this art itself that is entertaining.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I think it's probably the best form of art. I don't know about best, but it has so many complexities to it, and
Mhm.
it's very challenging. Like there's a lot of people who are good, like Lucille Ball, I Love Lucy. How
Mhm.
freaking hilarious she was on that show. But yet when people tried to get her on stage, and would write stuff for her and sort of like that, like it didn't work quite as
Mhm.
well. So to be a Kevin Hart or a Seinfeld, where you're, successful in more than one area of comedy or of acting, like we've seen Robin Williams, rest in peace, Jim Carrey. We've seen a lot of guys who went from straight stand up to being funny on TV or on the screen, also to be very serious
Mhm.
actors and other stuff. You could do drama and make people cry, but can you make them laugh? And I think that percentage is a lot smaller.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree.
Do you have the acting bug at all? Do you feel
I
that?
did in high school. It still follows under performance. So back in high school, I used to do like theater. I was in a couple plays, and I thought that's what I was going to pursue in college. But then life just took me in a different direction.
Yeah. So you have any advice? Because we're running towards the end of our podcast. You have any advice for the new up and comers, like how to do it, how to get started?
Well, the advice would be first write your first 5 minute set. Everybody's like, what you think is funny? Read a couple books, maybe on stand-up comedy. There are a bunch. The one that you discover it yourself, read it. It's gonna help you at least get you started on how to write the principles of comedy of like setup, punchline, premises, and not in that order, but there's that. And then once you have a 5 minute set, try to find an open mic, someplace that you don't have to pay and it's very low pressure.
Mhm.
Never go with any of your friends the first night. I suggest that you should just go, because if you bring your friends, they're gonna laugh at your dumb jokes and it's not gonna be real feedback. If you're gonna go up on stage and you're gonna bomb, just fucking bite the bullet. And then after that, just make some friends and stand-up comedy and see if you keep going out, keep going, doing mics, meet people, take pictures, record your set, listen to it again, analyze, get introspective, question reality, do drugs.
I hope there's no kids listening.
No, all the kids should listen.
So,
Uh,
yeah, when you said that, like, where's your stance? I know there's a lot of different opinions on this. Where's your stance on the comedy schools? Like people go there and they pay, a comedian and whatever, and they sort of give them lessons on comedy.
I think that it's like learning for learning's sake is never a bad thing. It exposes you to whatever. It might not necessarily be the quote unquote right way. This is how you're going to do it, because that path is only carved out by the person doing the time. You may go up and read all these books and know the principles of comedy and know about like what timing is and like, the principles, right? But when you go upstage, is the material funny, and that really has to do with your own imagination. What your synapses connect, juxtapose two ideas together to make it an unexpected twist. Sorry, I'm falling away from the question again.
Like the school, there's a lot of comedians who are
Right, the school.
against. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, there's the school of, going to take a couple classes and you're going to learn all of those stuff. But, the only real school is being on stage and failing and doing it again and doing the time. The time is the only thing that teaches you for reals.
All
And
right,
then
last
getting
question,
real
James.
feedback. Yeah, what's up?
Last question, man. The showbiz aspect, man. We've heard a lot of there's movies and talk shows and documentaries that go into this. Like, what's your view? Because you're living in LA too, man. And I spent some time there, and I have very strong views and opinions about just LA in general, but showbiz. Like, what's your, is it a healthy place, man? What do you think? Is it a place that you could be all in comfort, like live all your time in showbiz and still be a decent human being, or is it going to mess you up?
You know what? I have, it's funny that like I'm here in LA because for the longest time, I underappreciated what it meant to be in LA. I did not know that this was the promised land. This was just where I grew up. It's like, why is it always fucking hot? I wish I could see a white snowy day on a Christmas Eve. I want to wake up to some hot chocolate. I didn't get any of that. But as I got older and living in this like stand-up comedy world, I would meet like quote unquote famous people, not knowing who they were. And I would just have conversations with them like regular people, like, oh, you're just trying this out. You're new, right? But the showbiz world out here is a different beast all on its own. I don't know how to explain it. Like, there's stand-up comedy, which is the act of learning how to tell jokes on stage and its material and stuff. But then there's the showbiz aspect where you can have a mediocre 5-minute set, but it's because if you know some people who like you and you're doing enough and you're getting, people know you, you sell tickets or whatever, you're getting asses in those seats and you have like a following, your opportunities are going to grow exponentially as well. I think that true success will come for any stand-up comic when you can combine both aspects of that world. It's called show and business. There's the show aspect that you got to get to know people, and then there's the business aspect where it's like doing the work, writing jokes, getting on stage.
Well, what about the seediness that we hear about? People being abused physically, or like people ruining people's careers for spitefulness.
I think that's above my pay grade.
Okay, but like I mean, I've heard a lot from comedians, like not heard, like I know them personally, but just listening to stuff where you get your material stolen, you do shows, you don't get paid. For the women, you've heard all like sexual abuse, the Me Too. Like what I'm saying is, it seems to me that sometimes, or like even Dave Chappelle, when he like kind of went away for a long time, he was running away from the business.
Right.
He was like, this place is not a healthy place to be around.
But he was still doing
thoughts or experience of that? Well, I think he's doing it in a way that it's for him. No one's going to dictate to him how to do it. Where when you're coming up, and like you're saying, like, if I'm trying to be successful and I want to make some money, I got to sort of play along with these guys because these guys can help me out. But what these guys are doing it's fucked up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I want to say that, like, I am not at that level yet.
Okay.
So I am exposed to other comics who are in that level where they will talk about like, oh, fucking, I got to pay $100 so that I can host a show at this club, and like, I'll pay $100 for the spot, but I still got to sell tickets, and, you got to worry about that aspect. I think that's just business. The abuse that happens, thankfully, I haven't been exposed to that. Joke stealing, that, I don't know if it's joke stealing sometimes. And what I mean by that is that sometimes there are coincidences that happen. Like, for example, I've like met some comics where like, oh, like I don't think I know them, but they'll go up on stage and they'll tell a joke that is almost exactly like the joke that I saw.
Yeah.
And I was like, I guess we had similar ideas, or they saw me and then they kind of like absorbed the premise and then just told it in a different way. So that can happen, which I don't think I'm famous enough to the point where I'm like, oh, my jokes are getting stolen. It's like, it's just coincidences so far. I try not to hold on too much to my material because what you want essentially is to create more material. So like maybe somebody has a joke that they're doing well. I was like, all right, I'll write something different. And then, there are tricks that comics use where like they write very specific things to their life to like, oh, I was doing this and blah, 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 so that you reduce the chance of ever getting that joke stolen because it's, very unique.
Right.
Yeah. But I don't think anybody's stabbing each other in the back. As a matter of fact, from what I hear is that like, comics are very supportive of the other comics. Like more famous comics nowadays bring new up and comers under their belt, and they'll take them on the road with them to to do open up for them or whatever. And from what I've heard, it's very supportive. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm getting fucked over yet, so yay.
All right, man. I'll talk to you again when you're that famous.
I know. I'll be
when you
here,
got like
dude.
a story that you're gonna cry and tell me all about, man.
Hopefully not for a long, long time.
All right, James.
All
Thank you for coming on, man.
Thank you for your time, dude.